Everyone, and welcome to the Walking in Aloha Let's Talk Story podcast. And if you were here earlier, you noticed that we had a little bit of tech issues, but we are going to start all over. And thank you, Louis, for the grace that you had with me and the tech issues that we were having. Tech happens and the wonders of the world, but we are here now. So, welcome, 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 everyone. Today we are joined by a transformational guest, Louis Swart, a seasoned business coach for coaches and the visionary founder of Iron Bridge, a human AI powered virtual assistant company that helps coaches escape burnout and build self sustaining businesses. With over 35 years of experience in business, Lewis has built and sold multiple companies, managed over 450 staff, and trained coaches worldwide to delegate smarter, elevate faster, and accelerate their growth. He's also a published author, global mentor, and a top 50 finalist in the next top speaker competition. Lewis travels the world speaking truth in businesses with heart and humor, helping entrepreneurs reclaim their time, profitability, and peace of mind. So get ready to take notes, open your heart, and lean into this empowering conversation as we explore how the power of delegation, alignment, and AI can help you step into the freedom formula of your business and your life. Welcome, Lewis. Thank you so much for being with us and being patient with this technology. How are you today?
Well, thank you so much. It's such an honor to be on your show. Really, I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing with your message, and trying to bring that peace, across to everybody, and show them that there is a system. There is a system that they can follow, and I'm very big about systems. I love systems personally.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Iron Bridge. I love the way that you spell that, bridge. So creative. But can you tell us a little bit about Iron Bridge?
So, eh, I'll tell you my story up until Iron Bridge. Basically, I was 30. I was sitting in the bank, and they were counting out $5 million. 5 million of what was rand. They were counting out 5 million on a one of those counters. They go and the money comes out, and they put a elastic band on it. And I was thinking to myself, how did I get here? How did I get to the point where we were able to sell a business? My brother and myself, we were able to sell a business for 5 million, and we were able to sell it within a couple of weeks of actually listing the business. And it kind of made me think back about the business that I'd had previously. So previously, I had a whole lot of different businesses. And when I was 25, I had a plumbing business. I had 10 plumbers, and I thought I was going to retire. I thought, like, I'll never have to work again. And I went to a broker, and I was like, what's it worth, And the broker said, look, your business isn't worth anything. And it was devastating to me. And the reason it wasn't worth anything was because he said, who does your accounts? And I said, well, I do the accounts. And he said, who does the quoting? I said, I do the quoting. Who does quality control? I do it. And he basically said, Louis, I'd have to find another you to buy your business. I'd have to find somebody that knows how to do plumbing, knows how to do accounts, knows how to do HR, knows all these different roles. So your business is worth nothing. And that was a bit devastating to me. But fast forward the 5 years, and we'd started another business. This business, we had 200 staff. Um, and when it came time to sell that business, the people that came in said, well, who does the recruitment? And we said, well, there's the lady who does recruitment. Who does the equipment? There's the person who does equipment. Who does accounts, etc., etc. We were able to point them in all the right directions. So it was a very easy sale for them because they knew that they could just step in and take over the business. And that taught me a massive lesson about delegation, the power of actually delegating. And then and then I moved to Australia. I had some epic, amazing businesses, some epic fails. We all go through those ups and downs. And then I had the last business. I had 450 staff working for us. We grew it from nothing to turning over 35 million. Amazing business, but I felt broken. I personally felt broken inside, and so I went on this quest. I was like, oh, what would you do? What would a business person do? How would I solve this if it was a business problem instead of a personal problem? And so I thought, well, I'll go and find the experts and I'll learn from the experts. And so I went and found NLP person, and I actually studied NLP, and I became an NLP master practitioner. And then I went and found a hypnotherapy person, and I studied hypnotherapy, and then a timeline person, and a matrix person, and all these different constellation people, and energy healers, and the whole reason was to fix me as a human, because I felt like something was wrong. And then, once I'd sort of resolved a whole lot of those problems, I then knew that I knew how to do business, and I knew that now I knew how to fix mindset, how to fix my own mindset. And so then I thought, well, I need to go and help people to be able to do this. And that was when I actually started Ironbridge. And I initially started a coaching business, and I went out and I helped a whole lot of people, and people came to me because it was, I was able to help them. And then I got mad imposter syndrome, where I felt like, what, how am I qualified to help somebody like you, Michelle? You may not have staff, or you may have one or two staff. How am I qualified to help you? I had a whole heap of staff. How can I tell you how to market? I had a marketing department. And so then I didn't want to be that business coach who goes out and helps people, and they say, well, what business have you had? And they will, I'll coach people. That's what I've read in a book, and now that's what I do. So I actually started the virtual assistant business. And the virtual assistant business was designed specifically because I knew how virtual assistants had helped me in my business previously. We'd hired 18 staff offshore, and that had saved us $45,000 a month, which is a phenomenal amount of money. So then what I did was I was like, okay, well, how do I help smaller people to actually get the benefit of that? And that was when I started Ironbridge. And very quickly, I was able to grow to sort of 50 staff in the Philippines, because I had systems and structures. I've always managed big amounts of people, so it was very easy for me. So, and the name Ironbridge really just comes from bridging the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And how do I get you from where you are to where you want to be? And not by telling you. The whole thing is not by telling you how to get there. It's by actually holding your hand and leading you there along the way. So that's where it comes from.
Wow, that is so good. Like bridging that gap, like you said, Iron Bridge, and where you said being the from imposter syndrome to, like you can do it, and bridging that gap for other people, and not just telling them how to do it, but actually being there to help them through it. That is so good. That is
Yeah.
so important, because, like with my book, Walking in Aloha, 5 Steps to Living Your God Potential Life, I wanted to help people from the grips of domestic violence. That's where my book came from, because I went through that and I wanted to help people. But when I started writing my book out, I was like, I didn't want it just to be like my pain all written out on this paper. And so I asked
Mm.
God, I said, Lord, if you need me to write this book, I didn't want it to just be all of the hurts. I wanted people to see
Mm.
the healing that I went through, and I wanted them to see, like, how I got from point A to point B, bridging that gap, right? And
Yeah.
I didn't know how to do it. I never wrote a book before. I was like, how do I do this? And he said, I gave you everything in Aloha. And it was such a simple thing to hear. And I was like, how is that? So I started writing, how did God help me through? And how did I get from where I was to where I am now? And it was through the affirmations and actions, through the leadership and love, through overcoming obstacles and the health and healing that I went through, and the acute awareness. And it spelled out aloha. And I was like,
Mm.
wow, that is so amazing. I never looked at it in that context until I started writing it out. And so that's where my book came from. That is how this podcast came about. And that is what I teach now. And like you do too with Iron Bridge, you walk through
Mm.
that in order to give it to someone else. And that's why now, walking in Aloha, Let's Talk Story, I still use the aloha, and walking in aloha is the same aloha always framework. I found that as I spoke to
Mm.
people all over the world, from Spain to Saudi Arabia, and right now where you are in South Africa, I was amazed. Like, people walk in aloha in their own ways. And so, right now, I want to just go over the Aloha Always framework with you. And as we can see, you walk through Aloha in your own way. Let's go over the framework. If you don't mind, we'll just hop into the questions, and we'll start
Awesome.
with we'll start with the affirmations and actions. So, you've coached many business leaders to overcome burnout and build balance.
Mm.
What affirmations or daily actions do you use personally to stay aligned and focused in such a fast moving business world?
I think the main one that I use is the what's the one thing that I'm going to accomplish today. And I learned this during business because initially you think you can do everything, and so you're running around and you're trying to accomplish, you've got a to-do list for the day and it's got 50 things on it. And the reality is that you get to the end of the day and you haven't done the 50 things, or you've done some of them, and it's you never feel completely accomplished. Whereas if you start off the day and you say, what is the one thing that I need to do today that's going to move me forward, you'll find that if you accomplish that one thing, the whole rest of your day kind of fits in place and you will move forward. We all know that there's that one thing that we should be doing that we don't do, and we find a whole lot of other things. I have a term called productive procrastination, and productive procrastination is really, you go, I need to fix my accounts. Okay, I need to do my taxes, for example. And then I go, oh, look, you know what, the carpet looks a bit messy. I should really vacuum the carpet. And so you start vacuuming the carpet. Now, while I'm vacuuming the carpet, I should probably just dust the shelves. And you're being productive, but you're actually procrastinating from that one thing that you should be doing. So you fill your whole day with productive procrastination. Whereas if you start off the day and say, what is that one thing? And then you accomplish that one thing for the day, you feel good because you've been able to accomplish that one thing. Now, sometimes you need to use the Brian Tracy, the Eat That Frog. You need to use his concept where you might have one thing that's a really big thing, and you need to break that down into small stages. And then what's the one stage of that big thing that I can accomplish today? And that way you feel better. You feel better every time you do it. Um, I'm also very much about gratitude. So I have a gratitude journal, and I get my team every morning. My team gets together. We call it the huddle. And in the huddle, we say, what's one thing we're working on? What's one thing that we need help with? And then what's one thing that we're grateful for? And the weirdest part is when you start, you sit down and you kind of go, what am I grateful for? What have I got that I'm grateful for? And we're kind of thinking of these massive big things in our life. You know, Oh, I didn't get a Ferrari, so I can't say I'm grateful for that. And I didn't get this and I didn't get that. And the reality is that when we sit down with people and say, have you got clean drinking water? And they go, yes. Yeah. Have you got food today? Have you got food for the next meal? And have you got food for tomorrow? And they say, yes. Already they're in the top sort of 5% of people in the world. Did you have a roof over your head last night? Have you got people around you that love you? you know, Incredible things to be grateful for. But we kind of just overlook it if we're not thinking about the gratitude. So if you're starting off every day with gratitude in mind, and even if you're doing it with an accountability person, you start looking around because you're going to have to say something about gratitude tomorrow. So you start looking in your world for things that you can be grateful for, and you're more aware of them. And that actually just helps you to be a better person because, obviously grateful people are better people.
That is so good. I love that gratitude. Sometimes we forget to be thankful for those little things, like you said. Do you have water? I travel the world, and we go to places where you're like, wow, there's things that we sometimes take for granted of, you know, and you can see where people have hardships, and you're like, wow, we should be more thankful for the things that we have. And I love the productive procrastination that you mentioned. I literally had to write that down because how many times I can catch myself in doing that right there, where you feel busy, you feel really busy, like I got a lot of things done, but was that any of that 50 things on that list that I needed to get done? Right? That is such a good thing. I'm gonna have to put that on my mirror. Productive procrastination, like be careful of that, not being, like keep yourself busy and not get anything done. So how do you
Mm.
help your clients move from simply believing they can delegate to actually doing it, taking that leap of trust and action? Because like for me, I'm afraid that if I say I'm going to give this to someone to do, am I going to be like hanging on to it, or am I really going to be able to let it go and allow that person to actually do it? Right? Uh, How do you do that?
Um, Look, some of it comes down to control. So it's about you being able to let go of control. Now, I'll give you a great example. When I was younger, I had an old mentor, and I said to him, I can't find people to do work for me. Nobody can do it as good as I can. It's so hard to find good help. It's, like they're just going to stuff up all my things. And he said to me, Louis, do you think that if you found somebody, they could do 60% of what you do? And I was like, yeah, they could definitely do 60%. I mean, they couldn't do 100%. Like, I'm amazing. I can do everything. But, they could do 60%. And he goes, okay. So if you hired one person, you would now be able to accomplish 160% of what you were able to accomplish before. And that to me was like oh, wow, okay. I can actually accomplish like 1.5 times. And he said, when you hire your second person, they also only have to do 60%, but you can now do 220% of what you could do before. And as you're hiring these people, you're ending up multiplying what you can do massively, even though each one of them is only doing 60% of what you do, which is a pretty sobering thought if you think about it. We think that we've got to hire somebody and they need to do 100%. I mean, they need to work. I work 18 hours a day and I'm super dedicated. I work through my lunch, and then we hire somebody and we go, well, they don't work through their lunch and they don't work 18 hours a day. That's not their business. They're not going to. You know, lots of us as coaches actually run a super expensive hobby. We've got a super expensive hobby because we work harder than anybody. We don't charge most people for the work. It's costing us money to have this business happening. And we can't expect a staff member to do the same. So think about realistically what you can give them. And there's a couple of ways that you can do it. One way is where you, like I go, if I was giving you work to do, I wouldn't say to you, okay, I'm going to start off, I'm going to give you the super complicated task that I've got. And it's going to take me 3 hours to explain it to you because it's super complicated. I would say to you, hey, I've got a 2-minute task. Or a 5-minute task. It's super easy. I go into my emails and I clear out the spam. And this is how I tell if it's spam or not. And then you would do that. So now every day I'm saving 5 minutes because you're doing the task. And then with that 5 minutes that I've saved, I'd say, hey, I want to show you another task that's a bit more complicated. And I'd show you a task where you could save me 20 minutes. And then the next day I'd show you a task where you could save me 20 minutes. Now I've already saved like half an hour or an hour in the day. Now I can say, okay, let me show you a more complicated task because it's going to take me an hour to show you how to do this more complicated task. But I've already saved the hour because I've given you little tasks along the way. So that's how you would do it. And that will also help with the control because we feel like I can't just give somebody access to my Facebook and access to my stuff. But once you start giving people a little bit of stuff, you're building up trust in them, and then you can give them more and more and build up some more and more trust until you get to a point where you can actually trust them to do whatever that role is that you want them to do.
That is good. Yeah, like the multiplication, like you said, thinking about the fact that you're not giving them 100% of what you can do because, yeah, you're right. I eat through my lunches. Um, just last night, I was at work and I popped open my computer while I'm at work, and then just so happened something popped up about I'm actually leaving next week on a trip, and I needed to find coverage because someone who said they were going to cover me just kind of flaked out. And I'm like, I'm here, I'm eating, and then I hop off this computer and I jump onto the computer, the work computer, because now I saw someone said they're going to cover me. So I'm over there. And this, I didn't know, I'm doing my own thing. I am in my own world, but someone else was watching me, right? And so he goes, you must be really good on the computer. And I was thinking, what do you mean? Because I didn't realize that he was watching. He goes, because you were at lunch, and in that 30 minutes, you went from your phone, and I didn't realize, yeah, I had something on my phone. I was on my phone and my computer, and then I jumped over to the computer at the job site, but I was still eating my lunch. And he was like,
Wow.
he
Wow.
goes, and you're at work. And I was like, yeah, because, and I explained what I was doing and I told him about writing the book, and that was on the computer, but then the thing was on the phone. Then I had to go on and so those kind of things where you really don't realize, like, you do a lot as
Mm.
an entrepreneur, as a writer, as a coach. You do a lot, and you're not giving all of that to the other person because, like you said, there's nobody who's going to be able to do what I do. And but if
Yeah.
you give that 60% to someone else, you can now be doing 160%, or and you multiply it by that other person, and you're like
Yeah.
compounding that, and I can now see it, and you're like, oh my gosh, that is amazing to look at it that way. So thank you for that. My husband needs to hear that. No, dude. That is so good. That is so good. And the control to allow that, showing the little things, and to know that, okay, yeah, if they can take over clearing out my email, and I'm okay with that. Then the next thing, do another task, and it's okay. And wow, life isn't falling apart. That kind of feeling, right? You're like, it's okay to let
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
go, and things are still all right. Then you can see the trust. You're building up that trust with this person. So, okay, I can see how it's going.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that
Well,
is so good.
one of the one of the biggest comments that I get back from people is that it frees up your mind. So you free up a whole lot of headspace because we don't actually realize how cluttered our headspace is. So for example, you're having lunch and you've got these three different things you're trying to accomplish, you know, at one time. Now, in your business, if you're doing low value tasks, you've got the same thing. You're trying to accomplish all these low value tasks, and you don't actually have that time to be able to sit there and meditate and work out where would you like your business to go. You don't have that time to sit down and go, what sort of lead magnets could I create for my ideal client? You know, you don't have that time to sit down and say, how can I generate more income doing what I'm doing, or how can I how can I provide better value to the current clients that I've got? Because you're so busy doing that, you're busy doing, but you're not actually busy creating the stuff that's actually going to move the needle forward.
Yeah, that is so true. I'm a painter. I That's some of my art that's back there, and the only reason why there's so many waterfall
Good.
paintings is because when I teach when I teach painting, I paint with the people that I'm painting with, right? So I realized that I was painting the exact same painting over and over again and ending up with the same exact painting. So now I'm getting a little smarter on that. And when I teach a painting, I try to paint it differently. So I end up at least with different paintings. But I haven't painted in a while because I
Mm.
get so busy. And so, yeah, there's a little part of me that feels kind of sad because I'm like, I want to have time for that. I want to
Mm.
have time to be more creative, and I want to have time to sit and relax and do my creative side in other ways because I'm creative in so many different ways. But I want to do my paintings. I want to have that quiet time to do painting. And yeah,
Mm.
you just, like, have to have that. And if you are delegating, you are able to have more of that. And like you said, you have only have so much space in here. And just even
Yeah.
talking to you, just to imagine getting, taking some of that load off, I can almost feel that sense of relief. Like, wow, I can imagine how that would be to take some of that burden off. So in in Aloha, it's leadership and love. And even for me, coming out of the domestic violence, I had to be able to love myself enough to lead myself out of that situation. And I'm getting the feeling that this is kind of where it's at, even now, in this kind of a situation where you need to be able to say, I'm in this situation, and you need to be able to lead yourself out of it. So you've led your
Mm.
over 450 staff and mentored countless coaches worldwide. What does servant leadership look like to you in a business context?
One thing that I've found about lots of people that are leaders, they will become a leader and now they sort of almost have this thing like, hey, I can tell people what to do. And I can run around and tell people what to do. And, they've got to do it and I don't have to do it. And that's the worst possible leader you can ever get because it's a recipe for disaster because, people look at the top. And that's why the servant leader is such a good example to follow. So I was telling you about the huddle that I do with my team in the morning. So I will meet with my team in the morning and I'll say, what are you working on and what help can I give you to do it better? And if my team says today, they say I'm working on this project, and then tomorrow they say I'm still working on this project, and the next day they say I'm still working on this project, I then pull them aside and say, where can I help you to get resources? What resources do you need? What other members of the team could I put in to help you? How else can I help you to accomplish your task? Um, and a lot of people just feel. I'll tell you a personal story. I actually went to the Philippines. I had staff in the Philippines, and I had them for about 2 years. I don't normally tell people the story because, like, it's a bit embarrassing for me. But I had staff in the Philippines for 2 years, and I would be like, the staff in Australia are doing this and this and this. You need to do better. You need to do better. You need to do better. And I was driving them really hard, and I was getting better results than I was getting from my staff in Australia. But I was really pushing them. And then it was 2 years before. This was when I was very, very new at it. 2 years later, I went to the Philippines, and my staff in Australia all had, big 27-inch monitors, two on their desk. Okay, two big 27-inch monitors, and they'd have the emails and they'd have the spreadsheet, and they'd be like looking at the email and looking at the spreadsheet, and I was like, you guys need to do this. You guys need to do this. Like, hurry up and get it done. But only when I went to the Philippines, I realized that they were all working off little 20-inch monitors, one little 20-inch monitor. And I can tell you, in all the time that I've been a boss, that was one of the times when I actually I felt sick in my stomach, um, because I felt like I hadn't given them the tools, and I'd expected them to do amazing things without the right tools, and that was really, it really felt bad. It felt bad because I was driving them, but I wasn't giving them the tools to actually give me the stuff that I wanted. And they were accomplishing it, but under really bad, not bad conditions, but I mean, they were working on a little monitor, and so they couldn't compete with, well, they were competing, but, technically they couldn't really compete. They had to work so much harder. And then, so those type of things taught me so much about working remotely. Because when you're working with staff onshore, it's quite easy. I'll walk past your desk and I go, hey, Michelle, how are you going? And you go, I'm struggling because the screen's a little bit small. And I'm like, all right, I'll just get the IT guys. They'll get you a bigger screen. Do you need two screens? Well, I'll put two screens on your desk tomorrow. Whereas when we're working with offshore, we don't necessarily know what they're working with. We do now because we do IT checks on them and everything. But I mean, back then, I was going to an agency, and this agency didn't really, they literally just gave them one little monitor. And, but yes, so when I think about servant leader, that story sort of comes to mind, and it still haunts me to this day. To this day, I still feel terrible that I didn't serve them as well as what I should have in order to get the results. Yeah, but so I think being the servant leader is just literally you saying, how can I help you? What can I do to make your job easier so that you can accomplish whatever it is that you're doing? Because ultimately they're accomplishing it for me. You know,
Yeah.
ultimately at the end of the day, I should be giving them whatever they want because they're not doing it for them. They're literally doing it for me. So, yeah.
Wow. That is so powerful. You know, but for you to now recognize that, like, I'm a Christian, and Jesus actually washed the feet of his disciples, and he showed them how to be the servant to others, you
Yeah.
know? And so we
Yeah.
lead by example. And so for you to now recognize that and be like, oh, how you said that's almost embarrassing for you, or you feel bad about that. Now like you're like, oh, I would never let that happen again. And now you have those IT checks. And so it's so good to know. And like I said before, we we have to be able to like bridge that gap and be able to see that and be like, okay, yeah, we can do better. We always can do better. And as a leader, right, that's what we do. So how do love and compassion show up in your leadership style? That just shows it right there, especially when guiding others through growth and tough transitions. Like, I know that you
Mm.
just mentioned that because that was tough for you to see, you know
Very tough.
yeah.
I mean, there was, yeah.
So how does that, like in other ways, I know that was one example, but do you have any other how does your leadership style, especially when guiding others through growth? Because each person, I know you have a big staff and everything like that, but guiding through others through growth and tough transitions.
Well, I suppose one of the biggest transitions that's going to affect us all is AI. Um, and so, just to give you an example, um, we equipped our teams with AI as quickly as what we could. So we got them all using AI so that they could, imagine if you've got a staff member and they're great, and now you give them a bionic suit, okay, and they can type like 50,000 words a minute, and they can do all this. Who wouldn't want that? And literally, that's what it is when you get a VA and you basically combine them with AI. You're literally getting like this superhuman type, work out of them. But there's a lot of fear around AI because AI is going to take a lot of jobs. No matter how we look at it, AI is going to take a massive amount of jobs. And so, moving into this transition, I wanted my team to actually look at AI and go, okay, how can we make AI fun so that it's fun to learn and we're not scared of losing our jobs because AI is coming? And so, in order to do that, I do what we call an AI Friday, where every Friday I get the whole team together and every single one of them has to come with an AI. And it can be a fun AI, it can be a serious AI, it can just be a music AI, it can be funny pictures of themselves. That doesn't really matter. But what it does is it starts getting them to actually see AI as a friend, see AI as fun, see AI as something that they want to incorporate in the business, as opposed to me saying, AI is coming, you need to do this, or you're not going to have a job. So yeah, that's that's sort of what's happening at the moment.
Yeah. I know people that are so against AI, but I always compare it to, um, like I mentioned before, I'm an artist, a photographer. I did more photography before, but when I was doing 35 millimeter film, and it went to digital, I was like, that's cheating, right? When it went to digital and people had digital cameras and they didn't have to do all the settings, they didn't have to do all the things, and they were producing photos so quickly, and I'm still having to go develop them. I was like, that's cheating, that has to be wrong, and I was against it because I'm like, I'm not there yet. But what do I own now? I own a digital camera. So it is just a process of what we all have to go through, because time is only going to tell that everybody's moving into that direction. And everyone, even professional photographers, now use digital cameras, and it's not cheating, it's
Mm.
just the same. And so you're right, like having to move into the AI and being like not afraid that it's going to take your job, but actually kind of be ahead of the game, to know it, to learn it,
Yeah.
and not be like, oh no, you know, because I have people who are so against using it, like AI is the devil, you hear that a lot.
True.
Yeah.
But can you imagine? I'll tell you. I'll paint a picture for you. It's the 1800s, okay, and in the beautiful churches down below, there's people and they've got their scroll pens with their ink pots, and they're writing out the Bible like letter for letter, and they've had to learn from the masters how to do this, and they're doing each letter for letter, and they're putting so much love and care into a page, and it probably takes them 3 or 4 days to do a page. And then this guy Gutenberg comes along and he says, "Oh, I'll show you how we do it. We basically take the book, we put it on here, we go click, click, there's the page printed. Then we go click, click, there's a page, click, click, there's a page." I can imagine them saying, "This is the devil." I can imagine them saying, "This has got to be the devil," because there's no love. No love went into the writing there was no love in it, no care. This is not going to last. Surely people are going to go back to the handwritten, amazing stuff that we did. But if it wasn't for those people, if it wasn't for Gutenberg doing that, we wouldn't have been able to have billions of Bibles that we now have.
Hmm. Yes.
We would have still only had Bibles in
Yeah.
the hands of the wealthy, because only they could afford Bibles, because it took like a year to write a Bible.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And I
And it's
think
just
AI
the
is very
process.
similar to that. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I look at AI and some people say, well, if you did something with AI, you should really say, "I did this with AI," because it's cheating. The same as the digital photography, you know. And I'm sure when people were typing on an old typewriter and then we started typing on computers, I'm sure the typewriter people thought they should write on there that this was made with a computer, because it took much less time.
Right.
That's what I mean.
And
So
now
we've
it's
gone
like,
through all these stages.
yeah, it's just a stage that we go through, you know? And it's like, you will never ever see a document that says this was done on,
Yeah. Yeah.
So, exactly. So, in overcoming obstacles, the O in Aloha, burnout is such a common challenge among entrepreneurs. And what's a one powerful mindset shift or strategy you teach to move from burnout to breakthrough? This one is for me. No, I'm just kidding. But I know how that is.
Well, the imagine if you had a job, okay, and you went to work every day, and then you said to your boss, "Can I go on holiday?" And he goes, "No, you can't. You're not working hard enough. You need to work harder." And you're like, "But I've been here for a year and I'm working 18 hours a day. Like, surely I can take the weekend off or go on holiday." And he said, "No, you can't." Then you wouldn't want to stay there. You'd hate that job. You'd hate the job. You'd hate the people. You'd become super resentful super, super quickly. And yet, in our coaching businesses and in a lot of our businesses, that is what we're doing. We're going, "I don't have time to have a weekend off. I don't have time to go and do this. I don't have time to do that." And the little Michelle grows to hate that business, because that business is actually keeping the little Michelle from doing her art and doing all the beautiful things that she loves doing. And that's why the self-care is so important to incorporate in our life, because lots of us go, "Well, if I'm doing an 18-hour day, I haven't got time for self-care." But I do meditation practice in the morning, and one of the phrases that got me was, they said, "If you don't have time to do 10 minutes of meditation, you should be doing 20." That's kind of the phrase. And I know that if I just sit quietly and actually just kind of sit quietly, my whole day goes much better. Everything goes much better because I've taken time to just go into myself and just think about myself and, what I'm grateful for and, what's happening in my world, which allows me to actually approach the day with a completely different mindset. So, don't be that boss that says, no, you can't go on holiday. No, you can't have the day off, and you're going like, listen, I just need some time out because my head's full of stuff and I just need some time out. And a good boss would say, you know what, go to the movies. When you come back from the movies, then do whatever it is that you want. Okay? Not every day, but they would give you that time, that flexibility. And so we need to be that good boss to ourselves. We need to say, man, you're looking a bit stressed. Hey, is everything okay? Do you need any help? Do you need some time out? Is there something I can do to help you? And that's where we actually need to be looking after ourselves, and not just pushing ourselves constantly. Because if it was a boss pushing you, you'd hate them. And if it's you pushing you, I can tell you there's a portion of you that hates you. And so how do we get to that point where there's this amazing thing that you can do where you can actually just put down two chairs. You put down two chairs, and then you think of two parts of your body that are colliding. Okay, so I want to do painting. I want to do painting and be creative. And the other part of you is, I'm like so busy, I haven't got time. Okay, and so then you sit down and then you get somebody to ask this part of you that wants to be creative. Well, why do you want to be creative? What's the reason? What do you get out of it, etc., etc. And then you sit down with I'm too busy, and you go, okay, what are you trying to get out of being busy? What are you trying to accomplish? And you'll find that you've got these different parts of you that are internal. And if the part of you that wants to be creative is not being heard, the part of you that's busy is not going to be productive because it is sabotaging, it's being sabotaged by the part that wants to be creative. Because the part that wants to be creative goes, I'm not going to help you. I'm not going to help you because I need some time out. I need some time out to just go and be creative. And you keep trying to get me to work. And I did this process personally. And it was fascinating because I had a part of me that's just like, go, 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 go. Okay. And then another part of me was like, I just want some time out. All right. And when the person was asking me the questions, I discovered that the part of me that wants time out actually is not helping the part of me that wants to go, go, go. Right. Because the part of me that wants time out is saying, if I help you, you're going to go, 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 go 12 hours. And then you're not going to say, okay, that's it. You get some time now. You're just going to give me more jobs. So the part of me that wanted the time out is just going, well, I'm just going to take time out during the day. I'm just going to make you feel tired, and I'm going to just take time out during the day. So we've got these internal conflicts happening in our body, which is pretty amazing. Pretty amazing.
That is so good. I did a podcast with Gada Ahmed, and she's in Saudi Arabia, and she was talking about the saboteur and the sage, and that's it sounds exactly what you're saying is where internally we have a saboteur and we have a sage, and the saboteur is like, no, I'm just gonna mess you up, and the sage is like, well, if you're gonna do that, then I'm just gonna be tired in the middle of your trying to go busy. And so, yeah, you're right. You have to be able to slow down, and you have to be able to be like, no, you have to take time to be that creative. You have to, because you're actually sabotaging yourself, you know, with that.
100%. 100%.
So that
So
is so good. That is so good.
That's where the high value and low value tasks come in. So, a very easy equation is if you want to work out what you should be charging per hour, you need to just work out how much you want to earn per year. So, and let's say you want to earn $200,000 for the year.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's say you want to earn $100,000 for the year. It's a very simple equation. So you could work 40 hours a week, which is what you'd work if you were working for a boss, and you can probably work about 50 weeks a year. So 40 hours a week by 50 weeks is going to give you 2,000 hours. So in the year, you literally only have 2,000 hours to work. It's a tiny amount when you think about it like that, hey? Now, if you take the 100,000 and you divide it by 2,000, that gives you a figure of $50 per hour. Okay, so you've got this benchmark. You have to make $50 an hour to get 100,000. And if you want 200,000, it's got to be 100 an hour. And if it's, you can go up and up. But so if it's $50 an hour and you're doing a task that's worth $8 an hour, you've literally lost $42 that hour. Okay. So if you're doing $8, if you're doing these tiny tasks that you could get a virtual assistant to do, or you could get AI to do, your figure literally has to go down. It cannot stay there. But if you're doing tasks that are worth $50, $100, $200, all these higher level tasks, that figure has to go up. I mean, it's just a simple equation. You're doing higher value tasks, that figure's got to go up. You're doing lower value tasks, that figure's got to go down. Either way, you're working a lot of hours. Either way. But you're either doing these, which are high value, and it's going up, low value going down. So, you can get most stuff, you can get a virtual assistant to do for about $8 an hour. Okay. So, why would you be doing it? Why would you be doing something that you can get somebody who loves doing that to do for $8 an hour? Doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Like your your creativity, your value could be being used somewhere else and doing the high value stuff where you could have someone else be doing the low values things, you know, because you're only one
Absolutely.
person. You can't split yourself and be doing, so you have to basically make that choice. Am I going to take my time and do this, or am I going to do this? You know, because you can't do both,
Mm,
you can't split yourself.
absolutely.
So that is so good. So, how can business owners use AI and human assistance not just for efficiency, but as a way to restore balance and overcome overwhelm? I know that you
There's
just
so
explained
many
that,
ways.
but yeah, there must be so many ways.
There are so many ways. You could even, with simple programs like ChatGPT, you can actually go in and say, this is what my values are, this is what my life goals are. Okay. And then you can say to it in the morning, hey, just remind me what my values and life goals are. Okay. And the tasks that I'm doing today, are those towards or away from my goals and values and life goals? And it will actually tell you whether your tasks are going to move you towards there or away from there, which is pretty phenomenal. So, um, there's a whole heap of other stuff that you can do. So, for example, if I did a recording with you, I could then just get a copy of that recording and I could put it into ChatGPT and I could ask it questions like, uh, what were the challenges that I missed in the call? What were the things that Michelle spoke about that I didn't pick up on? How could I have answered Michelle better? What things should I do next time I'm talking to Michelle? And then you can go the next level deeper and I can say, give me a disc profile on Michelle based on the conversation. And it'll do a full disc profile. And I can say, is Michelle a right or left brain thinker? Like, are you a big picture thinker or are you a detailed person? And it will tell me based on the conversation. And I can say, tell me how I could help Michelle better. Show me how I could help Michelle better when I'm talking to her, and it will give me ideas of how I can help you better. And here's a really cool one. I can say, give me a 5-minute meditation based on the conversation that I've had with Michelle that will help her to be able to achieve her goals. And we'll actually write a meditation.
Oh, that
So
is great.
that's just some of them. There's a massive, I mean, I can show you, it'll take hours just to go through that stuff with you.
That is amazing. Like I said earlier, there are people that are so against AI, but I know for myself, I do use AI because I realize that there is ways to make things easier for you, to help you, with things. I had to, for my first book, I actually hired out an editor where now I use, Grammarly, I use ChatGPT, I use AI to edit my books. And people don't realize that they have used AI before, even the people who hate it, you know, the people who hate it. It's like,
Absolutely.
did you go ahead and find your way on a map on your phone? did you did you have to go map
Sure.
your way somehow on some map thing you got on your phone that GPSed your way from point
Sure.
A to point B or something? You just used AI somehow,
Mm.
some way, and it's not all that bad. It's like,
Now,
people, they're so afraid of it because, like you said, they think that it's going to just take everyone's job. But I'll tell you this story. We were in church one day, and the guest speaker, the guest pastor that came, he was from California. uh, I forget where in California, but he was talking about using AI for good. And he said that if we continue to say that it's bad and that we don't use it and we allow everyone who is using it for the wrong ways to use it in the wrong ways, then what are we doing? Right? So we
mm,
need to learn AI, we need to learn how to use it, and we need to use it in ways that will profit and benefit in good ways. If we don't, then we are just allowing people who are using it in the wrong ways to do what they do. So as
absolutely.
Christians, as people who want to do good and who want to serve people better, that is almost like our place to do and to
Mm.
do better for the world in order to, lead, like the L in Aloha is to lead other people. So good. Thank you for uh, all of that.
Imagine in the story previously, with the printing press, if we said, "Oh,
Yeah,
that's from the devil," and we only let people print stuff that wasn't Bible based, you would be so far behind. I mean,
yeah,
we've got a billion Bibles now, but we'd only have a couple of hundred Bibles still. You know,
yes.
we'd only have a couple of hundred if we didn't use the technology. And now we're moving to a stage where this is the latest technology. And people that have said, "Hey Google, can you do this?" or "Hey Siri, can you do that?" or people that have been on Netflix and it said, "We think you will like this next movie." They've all used AI.
Yeah, so true.
You know?
So the H in
So
health and healing, the H in Aloha is health and healing. In your experience, what role does emotional or spiritual well-being play in creating a truly thriving business?
I think it plays a massive role because, like we said before with the saboteur, if you're not healthy, and lots of times healthy, people are not healthy because their body's just going, "Look, you know what? You're overworking me, and I've had enough. I've had enough. I'm not going to go to work tomorrow. I'm just going to make you really sick so you're going to stay in bed because I've had enough. You know, whereas if you're in line with your self-care and you're able to play hard, work hard, you know, then it enables you to have that healthy relationship with yourself where you can actually you do want to do better. You want to do better because you know that it's going to give you more opportunity to, you know, do fun things and have a healthier life. You know, and people that say that you don't need money to be healthy are very unusual because, you know, if you're going to eat organic food, you know straight away that that's really expensive. And if you're going to go for massages and you're going to go and do all the self-care things that we should be doing, they all cost money. And so you do need money to be able to do those things. You know, it doesn't buy you happiness. It can buy you a happy meal though.
Yeah,
No, but you know, it doesn't buy you happiness, but it does buy you security. You know, if your child is
yeah,
sick and you've got money, it's a very different situation to if your child is sick and you don't have money. Two very different situations. So,
yeah.
you know,
That is so
and
true.
it's that, you know, and the Bible talks about, you know, people just say, oh, the money is the root of all evil. They take that one little part of the scripture out of context. And they forget about the fact that the first half of it says that the love of money, so loving money and being materialistic above all else is the root of all evil. But they just go to the love of money is, you know, the money is the root of all evil, you know.
Yeah,
And so they don't think that, you know, God wants us to be all prosperous. He created us to have everything, the best of everything. You know,
yeah.
that's what he wants.
That is so true. There's a pastor, Pastor Andrew Moman, and he talks about being leader fit, where you need to be healthy, you need to be fit in order to answer the call of God, and it's not just being because you are that vessel. If you're called by God and you're sick, then how are you supposed to answer? And like you said, you're overworked, you're overtired. The body does keep the score. And, you
Mm,
know, you're going to be sick and out, and you can't support your family. You can't make the money to support your family. And no, people say, I know people say it all the time that money is the root of all evil, but you do need money. Not, money is just a tool. Money is a tool for you to get the things that you need and supply for your family
mm,
and everything like that. So
mm,
it is very important to take care and to be healthy. And how are you going to maintain that health for yourself and your family without the finances, right?
mm.
So, how have you learned to
100%.
maintain peace and mental health while juggling multiple ventures, speaking, and mentoring others?
Um, I'll try and come back to the what's the one thing I'm going to do today that gives me, that kind of grounds me because it allows me to accomplish one thing that I want to do. And that sort of gives me gratitude that I was able to accomplish that one thing. Because when I try and accomplish a whole lot of things, I get to the end of the day and I feel unsatisfied because I haven't actually completely done that, completed that, whatever. Um, so that's one thing. The next thing is actually working on myself. So, you know, doing stuff like meditation, you know, doing meditation or doing prayer definitely helps you to be able to just come in touch with where you are. Because lots of us are running around so busy that we've got no time, but actually we've got massive programs running in the background, which are negative programs. And we don't actually stop long enough to hear what those negative programs are saying because we're so busy being busy. And, you know, we're working against ourselves. We literally literally working against ourselves as fast as we possibly can. And yet, if we just stop and take a bit of time, you know, um, and that's going to help you. That's going to help you to be able to work out, what do you really want? Where do you really want to be? How are you really feeling today? And I think for me, doing a whole lot of the other modalities has definitely helped me to be able to look at it and go, how do I stay happy in amongst this? And just I'll tell you a quick one. When I was doing business, I would lose a customer, for example, and I'd be like, "Oh, my life is the worst. This is the worst ever," right? Because I've lost a client. And then I actually realized, hang on, I actually had a really good week. I put on 3 new clients, and okay, I lost 1 client, right? And then as time went on, I realized, actually, I had a terrible week. Some weeks I had a terrible week, but actually the last 3 weeks were really good, and I've had a terrible week. So I've really had a good month. Okay. So initially I used to judge it by, how am I feeling this hour, or how am I feeling this day? And then I started judging it by, how am I feeling, how have I done this week? And then I started saying, how have I done this month? And then how have I done this quarter? And then how have I done this, the 6 months? And then how have I done this year? And then how have I done this quarter compared to last year, this quarter? And what that did is it allowed you to just have this a completely different perspective. Oh, I lost a customer, the world's terrible. And I go, actually, I've got 10, I've got 10 times the amount of customers that I had last year this time. So I'm actually done amazing, even though I've lost one. Does that make sense? And it's about working out that most of the things that we're coming up against are just little speed bumps.
Yeah,
But
that's good. That's
if
really
we,
goes down to perspective, right?
yeah,
Yeah. You said
yeah,
something
if we
earlier.
focus on them,
Yeah,
sorry.
right. So like you mentioned earlier about if you can't meditate for 10 minutes, then you should be meditating for 20. Like that, right? And so in that aspect of pers- like looking at that perspective, if you can't sit and meditate and be still for 10 minutes, then maybe you're too busy being busy, and you really should take the time to sit for 20. So that is so good in that health and healing part of it, the aloha. So good. I
Hmm.
love that. I'm going to have to do that because I do, honestly, to admit it and to be straight and raw, I do have a hard time sitting and doing absolutely nothing for 5 minutes now. It's like I have a hard time. I have to make myself understand, like, I'm like, okay, I am now resting and meditating. I am doing something. I'm not doing nothing. That mindset where you're like, I'm doing nothing. Why am I doing nothing? No, that's not nothing. That is health. That is healing. That is taking care of myself. And I had to tell myself that. So in the health and healing in Aloha, we all have to be aware enough about our bodies, and that leads us to the acute awareness. When we look at life, when we look at the whole scheme of things, we cannot forget the health and healing part of it all. We get so busy that sometimes that comes last. I mean, how many times we're so busy and we forget breakfast and we're eating a bar in the car, you know, on the way to work because it's just one of the last things that we think about. But it is
Hmm.
it is the body that we have. This is how we are doing everything. And if we don't take care of
True.
that, then what do we have? you know Your body keeps the score. Your body keeps the score. So, in acute awareness,
Very
the
true.
last A in Aloha, you teach systems and scaling, but also awareness. How important is it for business owners to stay aware of their why, their deeper purpose, especially when success starts to grow?
Because a lot of us as business owners, we set a goal, and the goal may be, for me, I know that I initially set a goal, and the goal was to get 20 staff, virtual assistants in the Philippines. And then I very quickly got to that goal, but I hadn't set another goal. And so I hovered on that goal. I just hovered on that goal because I reached the goal. But then it was sitting down and going, okay, what's the next goal that I need to get to? And why do I want to get to the next goal? You know, and for me, I personally love helping people. And so my big why is if I can help you and you actually help people, this is incredible. So I'm able to multiply the amount of people that I can help purely by helping people who are helping people. So that's really my why. Why I do it and why I help coaches, because I can make more money helping people in the corporate world, but I love helping people that are actually helping other people. Um, and I think for a lot of businesses, they're doing it. And if your why is money, and your why may be money, I mean, we all driven by different things. If your why is money, then you need to work out why do you want money? What's the big picture behind it? Because there's always, so we come back to the three things. We all want to be loved, we all want to be worthy, and we all want to feel safe. So does your why bring you back to one of those? So when you say, I want to make money, that's great. Why do you want to make money? And maybe I want to make money because I had a childhood where I didn't have any money and I felt poor, and I didn't feel safe. Or maybe I had a childhood where I didn't have money and all my friends had money and I didn't feel worthy. So what's the real why? Not just I want to make money. That's a great reason. But what's underneath it? Which one of those three is underneath that reason? And if you can get to that, that's the real route to getting to the next level.
That's so good. um, Dean Graziosi, he also talks about like when you look at the why, you don't just do the surface one, like, I want to make money. You have to ask yourself seven other questions of why is that, right? Why do you want to make money? And the underlying. So that is really good to dig
Yeah,
deeper. So good. What's
yeah.
one moment in your career when acute awareness of yourself, your team, or God's direction completely change the trajectory of your business?
I think that time when I went to the Philippines and actually spent time with
Mm.
my staff and realized that changed. It changed the way I already had run big businesses, but it changed the way that I looked at people, changed the way that I viewed how I was helping people to succeed. Um, so that was, for me, that was a massive thing. And I think AI is the next big thing that's coming along. And it's something that's already here, and we're looking at how it's speeded up everything. It's literally like, before we had the internet, you'd get the yellow pages, for example. You'd have this big book and you'd go through the big book and try and work out what was happening. And then we got the internet, and you go to Google, you'd never look in a big yellow pages book. It's so redundant. And AI is doing exactly the same, but on so many levels. This and I run on my Louis Swart Facebook page. Every Friday, I give you an AI that we're currently using. So one of them, I'll give you a quick example, is a thing called Notebook LM. And you can actually take every podcast that you've done and you can put it into Notebook LM, and you can then ask it to create a podcast based on that. And it will create a new podcast based on that. And then I can join into that podcast and say, tell me what Michelle thinks about this, or tell me a story about that, and it will actually go, oh well, in podcast number 3 she said this, and in podcast 10 she said that, and so she believes this. So we've never had access to so much information, and you know, do you know that the KGB in Russia had a file on every single citizen? But the files were in these massive rooms, okay? And they couldn't actually access the files. It was just like, imagine you got a name, you got every single person. So you go, hey, go and get Michelle's file. And you're like, there's like a million, like 10 million Michelle files there, right? And so it was very difficult to get that, or to, oh, Michelle's done something. Let's write it down and then let's go and file it under Michelle's file. But now with AI, we can have massive amounts of information. We can access exactly what we want out of that information. So it's changed the whole way that we look at the world. It's changed the way that people write books. It's changed the way that people run their social media. And I know for us personally, we use AI quite a lot on our social media. And I've got a basic program where I can literally create 6 months of content for anybody within an hour. That's phenomenal, hey? I can create 6 months of content for you within an hour, and you don't have to think about the content for your socials for the next 6 months. Pretty amazing.
That is pretty amazing, because I know that. So I get paid by Meta, by the content that I put out, and it depends on how well I do, right? It depends on how well I do, then the amount I get paid. Well, I haven't been doing too well because I'm not looking at that. I'm not concentrating on um, the they give you like little prompts or whatever anyway, they have this thing, and I'm not looking at it. I'm not concentrating on it. I don't do it, and so I still get like the few dollars. But my husband always says, there's people out there who's on social media that's getting nothing. So for you to get anything from social media is a good thing. So that's another stuff. But I'm like, it would be amazing to even think about the fact that I have 6 months of content that I'm not even doing. That's crazy. Because I have to,
Absolutely.
I actually go on and I read other people's content so that I'm trying to match it, or, like what is trending. But that takes time. It all takes time. And actually, I don't have that kind of time now. So it does drop. But anyway, the one thing that
You
you
need a
said
virtual
about,
assistant.
I seriously do.
You need a virtual
Um,
assistant, and if you get them powered with AI properly, they could do reports for you, tell you what, for example, what keywords are trending at the moment, and they could help you put those keywords into your content. You know, they could tell you the fears, frustrations, dreams, and desires of your ideal client. They could give you some stories relating to, how you help people.
right. And then just put it in there. And I'd be like, oh, free. That sounds like freedom to me. That's what it does. That sounds like freedom. You mentioned about the Philippines, and I actually I'm Filipino, and I've never been to
Mm.
the Philippines. I was born and raised here in Hawaii, and I always wanted to go to the Philippines. So I know that one day I will go to the Philippines. But the one thing that I do remember because I have family still in the Philippines that when I was younger, growing up as a child, um, my parents would take our like used clothes and things like that and ship it off to the Philippines. And I always thought that, like we were always helping people in need in the Philippines. And I I always felt like there's a need there. And even till today, now that I hear that, there's people in the Philippines that they love to do the jobs for America because of the cash flow, or what do you call that? The money
Mm.
difference that's from
The exchange rate, yeah.
the exchange rate. That's the word. The exchange rate between America and the Philippines. And, I'm like, that is so good that if even now, as an adult, that I can continue to help the Philippines in that way, I would love to do that. And like how you
Mm.
said you built businesses and things like that, if I could do that and continue to do that for my family that's still in the Philippines, or other people that I know that's still in the Philippines, that is amazing.
Yeah.
That would be a dream for me, especially that I do have heritage there, you know.
Mm.
But I thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everything that you've given us. It was such a great thing to have your wisdom, your humor, your heart with us today. It's so good. Your insights on building self-running businesses, telling me about 6 months of content that I don't have to do. Crazy, amazing. Leading with love and reclaiming time through smart delegation. That is a true blessing for me and for
Mm.
our listeners. Everyone listening, if you are inspired by Louis' story, and be sure to connect with him. Is how will we connect with you? How is uh, can we connect with you?
You can connect with me on Facebook. I'm on
Okay.
all the platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, etc. Um,
Oh, nice.
if you'd
Okay.
like to find out more about the content, about creating the content, I've got a very simple website. It's vip.ironbridge.com.au. I'll put it into the chat, um, and literally they can go there and they can see what they can get. You know, um, it's about $2,200 worth of value, and we charge $97. So, and that's a good introduction, because then you get to spend an hour and a bit one-on-one with me. I create 6 months worth of content for you, and then you can see if it's something that you like, or you want to talk about a virtual assistant after that. That's great. If you don't, that's fine.
That is so awesome. So I will drop your LinkedIn, your website. I have Coach Louis Swart at your LinkedIn, yes. And then I
Yep.
have the ironbridge.com.au. I will put that in the comments also. And then I will also drop your Facebook in there. Thank you so much for how you
Thank you.
showed how AI powered systems are helping coaches around the world elevate faster and live freer. So, just like Louis shared today, everyone, freedom begins when you trust, delegate, and step into alignment with your calling. Until next time, here on the Walking in Aloha, keep walking in aloha because you were created by the Creator to be a creative. Take time to be a creative. This is your time. Until then, aloha, ahuiho. Bye, everyone.